Hello. So you are looking at my pfSense router dashboard. So this is the main sort of interface when you log in. And I got some traffic here, some information about stuff, and I will blur out. Well, not really blur out, but hiding the IP addresses and also DNS here. So you can't really hack me. So I can't really scroll down either because then it will show the IP addresses. But this is installed on an old computer that I have. It's an i5 6600K that I built myself. Got 16 gigabyte of DDR4 RAM. So it's quite an overkill for a router, but yeah, it's fun to play around with. It doesn't have any hyperthreading or anything, this CPU, so it's 4 cores, 4 threads. That's more than enough for pfSense. So yeah, and I've been running this for about a year now, I think. Even though it says uptime 8 days, I did a restart because I needed to enable a third network card. You can see here interfaces, assignments. So I got 3 network cards. The WAN and LAN are 2 separate network cards. They are from Intel. They are identical. The third one here is called optional. It's the built-in network card on the motherboard. It's a Realtek one. And the WAN and LAN are normal, just routing. It's normal networks. So when you set this up, you have automatically internet access on the LAN. But when you add optional, it will be a completely separate network. And it will have its own DHCP server and its own rules. And by default, this network is disabled. So what you need to do is that you first you go in here and then you sort of add this network. So you need to add it first. Then you need to go in to this optional, and it's disabled by default. And then you have to enable it here. And you can name it to whatever you want over here, or LAN 2 or guest network or whatever. This network is connected to a completely different switch. So my LAN network is connected to a 10 gigabit switch, and this optional is connected to a 1 gigabit switch. So yeah, they are completely separate physically networking. So you need to set this up first a little bit. Static IP4. I haven't set up IP6 yet because I don't really use it. Here you can also set the MTU or jumbo frames. By default, it's 1500. Yeah, you don't really need jumbo frames here. And of course, you need to set up an IP or LAN IP address for this interface. And it needs to be a different subnet. So my LAN network starts with 10. So this, I thought, well, it starts with 20. So yeah, and then this both should be unchecked, and then you save everything. And when you've done that, you can go into the HTTP server like this. And then you get, when you set up the previous step, you have now 2 DHCP servers here, one for the LAN. So you see it starts with 10, the network 10 there, 100. Then you got a separate for the optional network. It starts with 20 there. And yeah, I also static mappings for different computers so that they will get the same IP address every time you start the computer. so you don't have to fiddle with the static IP addresses on the computers. I do everything in the router. So yeah, that's kind of fun to play around with, but this separate network or the extra network doesn't have access to the internet by default. It's completely blocked. So yeah, you need to go to the firewall and create a rule. And of course, here's the LAN sort of X or rules. So I basically copied the settings from this into optional. But instead of having the LAN subnets, I have the opt subnets. And you can, of course, edit stuff here. And source, of course, the opt subnets. Destination, right now is go to any subnet, so both the WAN and LAN. I thought I would set it to only WAN subnets, but it doesn't work for me, at least right now. So I wanted this network to only access the internet, not my regular network. But yeah. Save, apply. So now I got both for IP version 4 and 6. And this actually works. Now this network can access the internet. So if I switch, for example, to my Ubuntu, you see it has two networks. It says Realtek Ethernet, and that's the built-in on the motherboard. So it's activated right now, and you can see it's actually getting an IP of 20.11. And the second one is a 10 gigabit card, and I have identical 10 gigabit cards in my computers from TP-Link. But on Ubuntu, it shows up as a Quantia Ethernet, 10 gigabit. Kind of weird. And yeah, so right now I can actually just access this YouTube. So yeah, the internet works just fine. And also on, if I switch back to desktop, I also have two network cards on my main PC. The bottom one here, the Ethernet, is the built-in network card on the motherboard. It's an Intel i225-V. Right now it's disabled because I'm using the first one here, which is the TP-Link 10 gigabit card. But for some reason, on the Ubuntu machine, this network card shows up as a Quantia. But on Windows 10, it shows up as Marvell. Acquisition. So yeah, it's the cards are identical, but they show up differently. Kind of weird. But yeah, so why do I have two networks like this? Well, Windows 11, when I install it on the computer, it doesn't have drivers for the 10 gigabit card. So the computer can't access the internet. So that's why I have to have the 2.5 gigabit network activated, because Windows 10 have or 11 have drivers for it. So when I install Windows 11, I have to have this secondary card enabled. And then when I have it installed, then Windows will automatically install the drivers for the 10 gigabit card through Windows Update. And when that is done, I can sort of disable this secondary card. So I only use the 10 gigabit card or network. But yeah, it's fun to play around with. So yeah, these cards have completely different networks, and that's why I have them connected to different switches. I thought I would try to have the optional just not just accessing the internet, but I have to figure that out how that works. For example, you can have the optional network as a completely different Wi-Fi network. So you have a switch connected to this, and to that switch you only have like Wi-Fi access points. So that will be your kind of Wi-Fi network. And you can have different firewall rules for that, this network. For example, your phones and tablets, or a guest network, Wi-Fi guest network. So yeah, it's kind of fun to test around with. So yeah, a little video about that. So catch you later.